Welcome to episode 7 of Motor City UK. I'm Rob Capaldi. Thank you to everyone that continues to join as we explore the past, present and future of the automotive industry in the city of Coventry. We're seeing a steady increase in new listeners discovering the show through all the major platforms. If that's you, then welcome. We have some exciting topics to discuss and companies to meet in the upcoming episodes. It's been great to see so many people engaging with the story of Coventry's extraordinary automotive and transportation industry. For today's episode, we look firmly to the future. There was a time when Coventry in the wider West Midlands was famous for exporting cars. Jaguars from Browns Lane, Triumphs from Canley, Hillmans, Chryslers, Talbots and Peugeots from Brighton. For more than a century, this region shaped the way Britain and the world moved. But today, not all automotive exports leave the Midlands on a transporter or roll through the factory gates. In fact, one of the region's most significant automotive exports exists entirely in the virtual world. A few miles from Coventry, in Leamington Spa, Playground Games have built one of the most influential series of driving games available. A series that doesn't just simulate racing, but engages with and emulates car culture in a virtual world. Forza Horizon is not simply a racing game. For millions of people, it's where they first discover cars, modifying them, hearing their sounds, photographing them in dramatic locations, and racing them on a diverse range of global locations, forming attachments to cars they may never physically own. Recently, Playground Games and the British Motor Museum collaborated to launch Forza Horizon 6 The Experience, a museum built to preserve Britain's automotive past, working with the game studio shaping how many people experience cars for the first time. Both embedded parts of a region working hard to define what its motor industry means in the future. In this episode, we're at the British Motor Museum to explore what happens when the virtual and real world car cultures meet.
So I grew up in Coventry. So my dad worked in the motor industry and a number of the motor manufacturers that aren't there anymore. So I grew up around motors. I love cars. I think, like the other leaders at Playground, we all have a love of cars that kind of grew up through our childhood. I think the best games come from when you get a team come together who have a real passion for a thing that they go build it. I also think it's because we don't take ourselves too seriously. We do think about the cars as serious things, but we want everybody to enjoy them. You know, I always feel like social media and stuff trying to divide people. I actually think car culture brings people together. Maybe one end is what you think Formula One drivers, and right down the other end, people who maybe can't even afford cars, but can play them in the game. I'm Trevor Williams. I'm studio head at Playground Games. I've been making games for best part of 40 years now. It makes me feel old. But and I was one of the founders of Playground, so I've been there from the beginning and just watched it grow over the years into the huge success it's become today.
Around us, the museum has taken on a slightly unusual atmosphere for a Saturday morning. The world of Forza Horizon has stepped off the screen as icons of Britain's automotive heritage sit beneath glowing Forza displays and cherry blossom trees, sharing space with icons of Japan's automotive heritage like the Nissan Skyline GTR and Honda NSX. The museum has become a real-life Horizon festival, a celebration of the cars, music and culture of Japan and the game. While queues form to enter the museum and collect the highly sought-after Horizon wristbands, developers meet with the public and discuss sound recording, vehicle modelling, and the challenges of capturing reality in an ever-expanding virtual world. For a few months at least, the British Motor Museum has become something slightly different. Not just a place for preserving British automotive history, but somewhere that physical and digital car culture are occupying the same space. I had the chance to sit down with Peter Armstrong, the museum's new CEO, and Mike Bennett, the production director for Playground Games, to discuss the role of the museum at this intersection between the digital and physical world. How do you see digital experiences becoming more a part of automotive culture for the future?
I think it's two ways, really. There's the digital experience of the gaming that we're looking at today and films that cars appear in, and people are engaging in with those cars and automotive through those particular areas more than they have been before. So when I was a kid, me and my father would be fixing the car while my dad would be swearing because the car wasn't working, or we're doing something, or we're going down the garage or whatever it is. But now we're seeing more and more that people are engaging with the cars through the digital arena, whether it be Fast and Furious movies or the Drifter movie that's coming out, or the games that are being produced. And so they have an affinity with that culture and that car culture, but they're not necessarily seeing the cars themselves, which is what this exhibition is all about, to try and persuade them of that. The second area is just, as we know, we get in a car now and it's Starship Enterprise. It's all digital in the things that you're looking at and all the screens that you're looking at as well. So we're just moved into that technology.
And from a museum's perspective, what do you see as your responsibility to capture that view of today? We can look in the museum and we can see representations of like 1940s, 1950s garages. Right. We can look back in time. In 50 years' time, there'll be people coming to museums that want to understand what was happening in 2026.
Well, there is that, but also I'm a museum person, so I'm a museum director. So I've moved here 6 months ago. It's not a part of the world, part of England that I lived in very often, but the car culture here is huge. I had no particular idea until I got here that somebody has either worked with, been married to, the father of, that is involved within the automobile industry. So it's a huge pull just for this particular area. But I think also that we have to, we're not just as a museum collectors of cars, of old cars, but we are active participants in the future. So we really want to be telling people about what's coming, not just what is being here. And as we know in this country now, we're not huge manufacturers of thousands of cars, but we're certainly the leading point of innovation and engineering. And there are so many organizations around here and around the country that is doing this work that's cutting edge for the world. And so it's part of our role as a museum to tell the stories, but not just the stories of the past, but how the stories of the future can look as well.
Recording history in real time.
Exactly.
So how do you as a museum engage with industry to try and capture that view of today, either from a video games point of view on one end of the spectrum, or a electric vehicle battery development at the other end of the spectrum?
Well, we have obviously academics and curatorial staff that are always engaged in that particular area and will read the latest and listen to your podcast and hear the things that are going on and get interested with it. But at the end of the day, it always resolves down to people. What are the partnerships and relationships that we have with these organizations? So a day like today is really important to us because there are people here today that are very much involved in some of the engineering that we've now met and become friends of, and we'll be in contact with them, we're working with them. And so you build up that whole kind of group of people, and we're all in it for the same reason. So it's not, there's no competitiveness particularly. It's all about kind of, we all really want to see the car industry and the ingenuity and the engineering going forward. So we're all kind of in that together.
Do you think for young people that come and view the museum, I would imagine you maybe would overhear anecdotes of, I saw this car in the game and now I can see it in real life.
Yeah, that's kind of what this is about. But there's still a lot of young people who are engaged in fixing cars. I've met many 12 and 14-year-olds who are working in the garage with their dads to fix cars or build cars or make cars. So there's still a huge just an interest in the physical side of it and the engineering side of it, as well as the digital side of it.
Have you got any plans for trying to attract more young people to come and visit the museum?
Yeah, I mean, we do about 190,000 visitors a year, which is pretty good for a museum of this size, actually. But yes, lots of plans to go forward to try to attract an audience. So we have a kind of, I wouldn't call it guaranteed, but we have a core audience who are kind of your petrol heads who love cars and will come and see those particular cars. My role for the next few years will be, how do I expand that audience into families and into groups that may think there's nothing for them here? So a big question I always ask myself as a museum director is, what on earth, as if I'm a 15-year-old living in Coventry, what on earth has this museum got to do with me? So we have to find what it's got to do with you. So it's a reason for you coming and a reason for you to engage. Because I think you probably can attest that when you get here, there is lots of things that you do find that's associated with you. So part of the role is just to get people to understand that when we're talking about automotive and engineering, we're not just talking about fixing cars. We're talking about the culture and the music and the films and the clothing and the designing and the marketing and the financing and all the things that go into this industry. It's not just about that. There's other areas that we really want to connect. At the moment today, as we speak, there's a group that are in here that are doing some coding with the kids to get the cars work, little toy cars that they're making. So they're learning coding, they're learning computer coding. Again, and they're not looking at old cars, they're actually at the cutting edge of what we're doing.
I guess that's the hook to try and get them here is to show them something that speaks to their interest. But then when they're here, you've also then got the story and the narrative around the history and the development of the timeline.
Yeah, you have to have something that is relevant. We have what I call the 3 R's really, which is relevancy, revenue, and responsibility. So how do we do things responsible? How do we make sure that it's relevant to people? And how do we make sure that there's some kind of revenue for the museum so we can keep doing it?
So if I had to ask you, what do you think the future for automotive enthusiasm looks like? What would it be?
I think there'll always be this enthusiasm for the classics, but there'll always be the enthusiasm for classic cars because they just look great. And there's always the story and the smell of them and the noise of them. And there's always that kind of side of it. But of course, the classic cars are becoming classic cars. We've got an exhibition opening in 3 weeks' time, another exhibition called about hot hatches called Spoiler Alert. And those are cars from the 80s and 90s. And those cars are the cars that I used to drive as a young man, try to get the fastest little Ford XR3i, take it down to a car park somewhere, meet with all my friends, talk about girls, not get any girls, and then come back again. So that has been my experience. But that's become their history to people today. That's the cool cars, right? So it will change as it goes along. The connection will change as people go along. And those cars that we think is just an everyday car today in 50 years' time will be part of the history. And not just history as in the object themselves, but part of the cultural history of those individuals.
In the current world, people come to the car industry in a different way to maybe what they did 20 or 30 years ago. Does that influence what you do at Forza and how you go about developing the game?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I think it has to, because ultimately we're just people and we're kind of part of that enthusiast world. And so whether it's conscious or not, it's sort of influencing the way that we think about the game. Yeah, I mean, I guess with every title, the automotive world has moved on a little bit and car culture's moved on a little bit. But then you're also really mindful of the location that you set the game in, and is there anything unique about that place that you can go and capitalize upon and shine a light on for the player as well?
Speaking of geography, how does the geography of where your base influence what you do? And Leamington Spa is absolutely in the heartlands of the Midlands, which for the last 140 years has been the heartlands of the automotive industry in the UK. Does that have a bearing on the culture of the company and the development of the game?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So we often have, partners of employees who work at JLR or other firms around the area. And I think there's something really special about you drive around the roads here and you'll often see test mules out and about, which for people like me is always really exciting, seeing something kind of clothed in its camo and you're like, do I know what that is? Is that like a new version of something? And so I think that's always kind of feeding that excitement that you've got about, looking for new things coming out and about. But then I think where we're located, we're really fortunate to have it is a bit of an automotive hub, I think, in the UK,
yeah.
right? And that means that you're kind of spoilt for choice if you want to go and see things and experience cars. It's really easy to do that. We're very lucky here in the Midlands, whether it's here at the British Motor Museum or Cafe and a Machine as well. I think there's a bit of a renaissance, I should say, within the car world right now. And yeah, if you're someone who is excited about cars or is into cars, I think it's a great spot within the country to live.
We spend a lot of our time looking out the window and seeing what's going into our car park from JLR with all the different kinds of camouflage cars that come past here on a regular basis.
That's a good point. We're sort of at almost like a inflection point where we're located in. We're right next door to JLR's development centre, so there are going to be test cars on the public roads around here. You've got the location, which is a fantastic event space for bringing kind of events like today here. You've got Jaguar Daimler Heritage Trust next door capturing all of the history of Jaguar Daimler, and then British Motor Museum capturing the history of the British car industry.
We've got Aston Martin just down the road. Silverstone's
not far away.
Yeah. So I was just saying, I'm new to the area, so do this part of I've been in America for 11 years, so I'm definitely new to this area. So it's, but I didn't understand how much the car culture is in this particular area. I'm from Newcastle originally, so if I go up there, you better be talking about football. But down here, it's very much cars is the industry. Yeah.
Listening to both Mike and Peter, there's a recurring sense that this part of the Midlands still shapes automotive culture in ways that perhaps aren't immediately obvious. The factories may not dominate Coventry and the surrounding area in the way they once did, but the industry never really disappeared from the landscape. It simply evolved. There are still engineering centres, design studios, test facilities and specialist suppliers woven into everyday life. Prototype vehicles still appear on local roads, disguised beneath camouflage wraps. Motorsport companies sit quietly on industrial estates. Conversations about batteries, software and vehicle dynamics happen in offices just a few miles from where Jaguars, Triumphs and Hillmans were once assembled in huge numbers. Amongst all of that, one of the world's biggest automotive games is being built by people who grew up around that same culture. Continuing the discussion with Trevor Williams, he highlights how the local area influences the game, with the museum a central part of that influence.
This came about, it came from nowhere really, because we'd come over to the museum and we'd look at the cars and we'd do research here. And our studio is literally 20 minutes down the road. We have 3 studios in the middle of Leamington. And so I think that helped, just bring it all together. But I definitely think we were influenced just by growing up in this area.
I'm really intrigued by the fact that you guys are based so close by. We've got this other alternate part of car culture that is centered around our geographic location. That's quite exciting.
I mean, even this came together because of the area. Like some of the cars we were able to get from local people and local companies, they were willing to contribute towards this because whenever we'd go and ask a manufacturer for, hey, can we loan this car for this thing?
Yeah.
They recognized the proximity to playground, the proximity to the museum and the local area. A lot of the goodwill around setting this up was because of where it is, not just what it was.
Do you get a lot of buy-in from the manufacturers when it comes to development of the game? Are they keen to help you with data and information?
Oh, huge amount. So all of the cars in the game are licensed. They're all the real cars. We don't make fake cars in the game. They're all the real cars. So we have a relationship for ourselves and we're our partner studio in the US, 1010 Studios. We license all of the cars, which means we talk to all of the manufacturers, and particularly some of the cars that that are on the boxes in the game, what we call our hero cars. So on Forza Horizon 6, it's the Gazoo Racing GRGT prototype car currently due for manufacture. I think those relationships go deeper, and we'll have events where they'll bring cars along sometimes, they'll support us, and we have pretty close contacts with most of the manufacturers in the area in the UK. And there's some cool stuff we chat to them about. Some of those things come off, some of them don't quite, but for sure, we have pretty deep relationships with the motor manufacturers.
For many people, Leamington Spa still conjures up a very particular image of England. Broad Regency terraces, tree-lined streets, coffee shops spilling out onto pavements. At first glance, it doesn't immediately look like the home of one of the most influential automotive games in the world. But over the last 20 years, this part of Warwickshire has quietly developed another identity entirely. Hidden among the architecture and the office buildings is one of the most important concentrations of games development talent in Europe. A cluster of studios and creative companies that has earned the town the nickname Silicon Spa. In many ways, it feels oddly familiar to the Midlands automotive story from over a century ago. Just as Coventry once became a centre for engineering through the concentration of skills, suppliers, manufacturers and specialist knowledge, Leamington's gaming industry has grown through a similar kind of ecosystem. Studios feed talent into one another, developers move between companies, creative and technical knowledge circulates through the region almost organically. The products may be digital now rather than mechanical, but the culture surrounding them shares something recognisable with the West Midlands industrial past. And perhaps most interestingly of all, those two worlds increasingly overlap. Because here in the Midlands, automotive culture no longer exists solely in factories, proving grounds and workshops. Sometimes it exists in audio studios, motion capture rigs and offices filled with developers obsessing over the sound of an engine note or the way light reflects across a body at sunset. It's still car culture, just expressed through a different medium. That connection between Leamington gaming and the automotive industry is something that local civic leaders recognise and are keen to emphasise.
So I'm Councillor Sarah Bode and I'm the Mayor of Royal Leamington Spa.
How important is the video games industry to Leamington Spa as a town?
Absolutely massive, absolutely massive. We have so many different companies. It's a real focus for the games industry in the country. And so we're delighted to have this amazing focus. And then obviously today with the exhibition here, really focusing on Leamington Spa. So it really emphasises the importance of Royal Leamington Spa and the games industry.
The West Midlands has typically been very famous for the car industry.
Yeah,
It's part of the industrial heritage of the region.
Yeah.
With Forza and what Playground Games are doing, that provides a bridge between video game culture and automotive culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you view that as part of the mix of importance for the local area?
Watching people today pouring over the cars that are here, and the games, obviously, the cars are obviously part of the game. So I think again that it does provide that link between the real car industry and the games world as well.
Perfect, thank you. It'd be nice to see some cars from this area on the display as well.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
we say that you come here and actually you see it is our heritage locally
Indeed.
in Coventry and Warwickshire.
So from a point of view of looking at the past, the car manufacturers in days gone by, they sold aspiration. They marketed themselves as being an aspirational product. Do you think that the video game has a bit of a responsibility and an ability to do the same thing for future generations?
I think so. I mean, I guess the thing with a game like ours is we try and make it accessible to people of all ages. So, I think we see people coming into video games, and this is true for me, right? I played games back on the original PlayStation 2, like Gran Turismo, and then the original Forza Motorsport on the Xbox. And I think that kind of took the joy of cars from playing with like little die-cast models and amped that up to, I guess, a more real, more visceral experience through the screen. And I guess built within me a love of cars that I've kind of taken with me. And I think hopefully there are other people who kind of come in through the medium of video games and maybe experience cars for the first time. And I think in our game, it's really easy to do that because we don't just build a game which is for people who want to race. We want to build a car which is for people who want to drive and explore. And maybe that gives them a way to experience cars and build attachments with cars that they might not otherwise have. And then maybe at some stage in life that allows them to take that fantasy, that experience, that love that they develop through video games, and then live that out in the real world. And I think to some extent you can see that playing out if you look at the car market now. Vehicles that were fantasy vehicles for people like me when we were younger, like Skylines and Supras and vehicles like that, how sought after they are in today's market. And I think it's because of people of my generation who they always aspire to owning those cars in real life and they couldn't when they were younger. You've seen their prices skyrocket because now these people, they're out there, they're living, they're working, and they can afford to go and chase after that car, which was a dream car for them because of video games when they were younger.
But I don't think we should forget the fun element to it as well. So it's like our museum as well. It's got to just be fun to engage people as well. So the joy of sitting behind the wheel of a real car and driving, it should put a smile on your face. Elvis, don't drive any. Life's too short to drive boring cars, right? So it's having the fun element that you're driving a real car and the fun element when you're playing the game. It's got to put a smile on your face.
100%.
I think that my observation of Forza would be that you do capture that very well in that you mentioned the fact that it's not just racing. Like there's a festival element to it. There's a enthusiast community within the game. Is that something that's been a conscious decision over the years to take that route, or is it something that's naturally evolved based on feedback?
Oh, definitely, it's been conscious, but I think it's been a conscious decision that's been somewhat informed by looking at the way that players experience our games. I think since Horizon 3 onwards, we've really tried to develop and emphasize the community angle to our game. As we talk about Horizon Fun, Horizon Beauty, Horizon Community. Community is like really, really big for us. And so that allows people to kind of build cars, share cars, build liveries, tunes, build racetracks, build garages, and share that among the player base. So yeah, it's a really big part of what our game is about.
Back in the exhibition, developers stand beside the cars they've spent years digitally recreating. The owners of these cars have been an integral part of the development of the game, contributing to Playground's engagement with the enthusiast community, bringing those owners behind the curtain of the development process.
So the funny thing is, last August, I went to an airfield and they did the sound recording for Horizon 6 from that car. So they had about 14 microphones like in the cabin, in the engine and by the exhaust. And it was crazy. They had a pro driver and just a guy who held the box.
Yeah.
And it looked like the Back to the Future DeLorean because they had everything taped to the sides and it was just madness.
Yeah.
The driver they had on the day, he was saying that a lot of people in the current games are looking for like authenticity, so how it looks, how it sounds. So they were recording all the control sounds in the cabin, and they said, especially the Chinese, they said they lap this up. But it's got to be authentic. So I don't know how much truth there is in that, but he seemed to think that paying a lot to get something that looks and sounds exactly like the car is worth it.
Inside and out as well. You've literally got an auto show where you can look at all the cars, open doors.
It's a level of detail you almost don't expect them to do if they're recording like the interior sounds as well.
Well, they did everything, the horn, all the switches when they'd finished doing the runway runs. I was quite impressed with, the kind of detail. And they said they were doing it, I think 2 or 3 a week, week in, week out.
Outside the museum itself, the atmosphere is different. The calm, reflective pace of the exhibition hall gives way to tyre smoke, rev limiters and crowds gathering behind barriers with phones held in the air. Because while much of the conversation around modern car culture now happens online, through games, forums, social media, both Playground Games and the British Motor Museum clearly understand something very important. The physical side of car enthusiasm is a visceral experience, and replicating the Horizon Festival in real life needs sound and dynamic movement. Throughout the day, live drift demonstrations transform part of the museum grounds into something that's much closer to a festival paddock than a traditional heritage venue. Cars snap sideways through corners, while younger visitors, many of whom have first encountered drifting through games like Forza, watch the performance unfold in real life. For younger enthusiasts especially, events like this create an important bridge between digital familiarity and physical experience. The sounds become real, the forces become tangible, the smell of fuel, hot brakes and burning tyres suddenly replaces headphones and control of vibration.
I got into it, I was about 14. My dad took me to Santapod to a Japanese show. His friend had an RX-7 FC back in the day, and I spotted some drift taxis, and I got in the passenger seat of an R32 Skyline, and literally from that day forward, I was hooked. My name's Tessa Whittock. I am an international stunt driver and drift driver, and I have done lots of different things all over the world. I actually started drifting in a Suzuki Vitara on muddy fields, and then I bought my R33 Skyline when I was 21, and then I've gone all over the world, been sponsored by Monster Energy, and now an ambassador for Toyota.
Fantastic. I think your journey there is quite maybe traditional in that you kind of saw physical vehicles doing something. We come to an event like this and there's a huge part about the virtual side with Forza and the younger generation kind of getting interested in cars through playing a video game.
Yes.
Do you think that's an important part of the future of automotive culture?
I do think so, yes. So I actually run RDX Drift Academy, and we have a lot of students that have, obviously, motorsport is very expensive. So getting behind the wheel on a sim and things like that is very important. And when you get the opportunity to then jump in a vehicle, you just add that extra move element, and you're actually a lot better versed to then jump in that car to add that one extra element rather than learning it all from an actual real car.
So do you get a lot of people that have come from playing the game and then want to do it in real life?
Absolutely, yes. We've got so many people that come along, and it is quite incredible to see how real life actually converts to the gaming world and vice versa, really.
What do you think that if you had to pinpoint one thing that you can only experience in real life that you couldn't experience in the game, what would it be?
Well, it would have to be the forces, especially when drifting. You get transition feeling of going from left to right. And I think that's what you can't get in the virtual world.
I'm Nicola Hume. I'm an automotive journalist and motorsport presenter.
So we're at an event focused on a video game, not focused on traditional car culture. What do you see the future looking like for people that are becoming interested in cars and how they get interested in cars through a video game rather than through racetracks or physical vehicles?
I mean, we're seeing it more and more often with like sim rigs and things like that becoming so realistic that actually those that are gaming at some point can just get in a real car and take it on a real life track. It's becoming that realistic that in terms of driving skill, driving level, the people that are at the top of their game in the gaming world, so to speak, can actually become the top of their game in the real motorsport and real car world, which is a crazy place to be. It really is.
What do you see as the future for young people that are becoming interested in the car industry? You think that this kind of game is a great catalyst for them?
Absolutely. I mean, I haven't played 6 yet, but I've basically watched people online while they've been playing it, and how realistic it is unbelievable. But it's not just a car racing game. It seems to be a game that's made by proper car people. Like, they know, they are part of car culture. And especially setting it in Japan, I thought was just a really, really great shout from them. But the fact that as soon as you go into the garage and how much you can customize your cars, you can change the front end and the rear end independently, add on whatever stickers you want, add on your body kits over like 100 different rims to choose from. It means that everyone can show their personality within their cars. And then when you're growing up as a kid playing these games, these super realistic games, they're just going to grow up into proper car community adults. And those are the best kind, right?
Listening to all the conversations we've heard so far, there's a recurring idea that keeps resurfacing. For younger generations, the route they take to become interested in cars is becoming far less linear than it once was. Previous generations may have discovered cars through family garages, TV, motorsport paddocks, or magazines left on living room tables. Now, just as often, the starting point might be a console, a simulator rig, or a virtual garage filled with cars they may never have seen in the metal before. For many visitors walking around the event, the presence of Arctic trucks highlights the intersection between traditional media, video games, and an in-person experience.
We've been involved in the Forza game series since 2016. So it's about 10-year anniversary this year with Forza Horizon 3. Turn 10 Studios, Microsoft approached us back then to have our vehicles in the game, and that was the Land Cruiser 150 series on 37-inch tyres and the legendary Top Gear North Pole vehicle. I am Kareem. I look after project and commercial development at Arctic Trucks. I think it's a trend. It seems to be a trend with games like Forza that are leading the way with things like this, that they try and tap into popular car culture and really have their finger on the pulse of what people are doing, what people think is cool out there. We've always been, being all kind of kids or big kids, we've always been into computer games, so we have a lot of mutual respect there, Forza to us and us to Forza, and they just approached us on that basis. We do cool vehicles and they want them in their game, and it's a cool game and we'd love our vehicles out there, and I think it does that.
Do you see people that come and speak to you that have come across Arctic Trucks through Forza as opposed to through seeing them on TV?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the younger ones coming through. I mean, I'm not, I don't want to kind of typecast computer games are only played by young people, but very often young people that haven't watched the old Top Gear, with the guys back in 2006, 2007, they wouldn't have necessarily been familiar with that. So they recognize our car from being in Forza and other gaming titles, and that's the only place. But when they see them in the real world, that's what kind of ties the things that they've been playing for years and years on screen to things that are real life and everything that's involved around that, what goes into building them and so on and so on. We've got a few guys working with us that only appreciate the reality of what we do out in the world and what it means to people through Forza. I wouldn't necessarily say they've found us through the games per se. I think that's our own recruitment process and other things like that are far more boring than what we're talking about today. But certainly I think a lot of the guys, particularly those that are building the vehicles, they don't really always get the opportunity to go out on expeditions, to go out into the world, speak to customers and see the way these vehicles are being used. But if they have something to relate it to that they've got experience with, so our trucks being in computer games, I think it's really, really important that the people that work with us, even on the back end side, get to kind of appreciate what this means to people out there in the world. And I think the games do that. They make our brand cooler and more exciting and more relevant than it already is.
What's interesting about this is that Karim isn't really describing gaming as separate from the automotive world at all. By this point, the relationship feels much more intertwined than that. The people designing, engineering and modifying vehicles increasingly understand that digital spaces now shape how enthusiasts discover brands, build emotional connections and develop curiosity around cars long before they ever encounter them physically. That influence doesn't stop at admiration or entertainment. For some people, it becomes the starting point for something much bigger. As we start to end this journey, we return to the discussion with Mike Bennett from Playground Games.
So we were just talking a bit about, inspiring the next generation of maybe automotive engineers or designers or people within that space. And something that was really, really heartwarming actually was an event we attended last week to celebrate the game at Caffeine Machine, which is a local spot. I was sat with our art director, Don, at a table in one of the tents, and a fan kind of approached us with a Steam Deck, which is a kind of handheld gaming device in his hand. And he was all dressed up in his Jaguar branding. And he's like, oh, hey, are you guys members of the development team? We're like, yeah, sure. And he's like, I just wanted to take a minute to talk to you. And he basically gave us this story of how he's played our game since the very first one, since Horizon 1. And that has sort of inspired his love of cars. And that has sort of taken him from somebody who's played the game to actually want to pursue engineering as a career. And he is now a member of Jaguar. He's a Jaguar engineer. And we just thought that was so cool to kind of hear from this thing that we build, which, if you want to be really reductive, it's for fun, it's for joy, but it kind of gives people, and it gave him, hey, I can see a thing here which could be a future for me, and he's been able to go off and make that real. And so, yeah, that's a really special thing to hear when you speak to a fan and you hear something like that. That's very, very cool. So yeah, maybe he's going to be off engineering the next generation of Jaguars, which is going to show up in future titles. So that's a cool thing to think about.
I get the strong feeling that this event has quietly challenged a lot of assumptions about what modern car culture actually looks like. For some time, there's been a recurring narrative that younger generations are losing interest in cars altogether. That enthusiasm is fading, that the emotional connection people once had with driving, engineering, and automotive identity is gradually disappearing, mirroring the incorrect narrative that the car industry in our local area is fading in the same way. Nothing at this event correlated this. If anything, it suggested the opposite. The relationship people have with cars is still evolving, just through different spaces, different technologies, and different experiences than previous generations might recognize immediately. For some, the first spark now arrives through a screen rather than in a workshop, through a console rather than a magazine, through a virtual road in Japan, Mexico, or Britain before a real one. The same things that drew earlier generations towards Jaguars or Triumphs now exist inside digital spaces as well as physical ones. And perhaps that's why this event felt so appropriate here, of all places, because Coventry and the West Midlands has always been a region shaped by reinvention, from sewing machines to bicycles and cars, from mass manufacturing to advanced engineering, and now, increasingly, from physical vehicles to digital automotive experiences, created only a few miles from where Britain's motor industry first established itself more than a century ago. The instinct to build stories, identities, and communities around cars still feels deeply embedded in this part of the country. It's just expressed in new ways. And that's the real story here. Not that car culture is disappearing, but that it continues to adapt, just as it always has. You can, of course, find much more information about Forza Horizon 6 and the British Motor Museum online. I'll put some links in the show notes for you to follow. I'll also add links to Arctic Trucks and RDX Drift Academy if you're interested to learn more about the work they do. I strongly recommend you make the visit to the British Motor Museum. Their collection of historic British cars is exceptional and charts the history of Britain's place in the global automotive sector for the last 140 years. They're also working hard to capture the evolution of the industry today and continue highlighting our place as a centre of excellence for the development of new technologies. It'd be great if you're able to support the podcast online. Find us on Instagram. We're at MotorCityPod. You'll find behind-the-scenes content, updates on future episodes, and more from the places, people, and vehicles connected to Britain's original Motor City. And finally, if you've enjoyed this episode, as always, please do follow us on your podcast app of choice. Leave us a review and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps more people discover these stories. Join us next time as we continue exploring Coventry's unique relationship with transport, engineering, and the motor car.